When the earth began to crunch on the distant Kamchatka Peninsula, few imagined that the gigantic shudder was not just an isolated tectonic movement. They say the ground first cried out with a deep, almost imperceptible murmur, like a whisper that brushed the feet of the inhabitants of the Russian coast. It was early morning, and while the world slept, the ocean swallowed its own silence, only to echo it back, multiplied in the form of relentless waves. The magnitude, experts said, surpassed all recent estimates. An 8.8 magnitude quake pierced the calm of the Pacific and triggered sirens on coasts that had never felt the pulse of destruction so close. In Japan, Hawaii, and Alaska, families heard alarms that recalled old stories of islands obliterated by violent waters. But was it just a natural phenomenon, or did this roar hide something more? Many don't know it, but Marian messages, those words the Mother of God whispers to her chosen children, have warned for decades that the earth would shake like a frightened child, that signs would come from the seas and the depths. Some pilgrims, standing before images of the Virgin in temples lost among the mountains, have told of her weeping when the earth trembles. She wept in Fatima, she wept in Medjugorje, and there are those who claim to have seen her shed tears of salt off the Mexican coast when the waves rose like merciless giants. While the media reports only numbers and seismic charts, thousands of hearts tremble, wondering if we are witnessing before our eyes what has been repeated by word of mouth for generations. The soil of Russia, distant for many, becomes an echo that travels into our homes. The question burns in our conscience: what else is behind this tremor? What message does the Virgin Mary want us to understand from this subterranean roar? Those who have followed the heavenly messages know that when the earth creaks, it's because heaven is demanding attention. There is a silent call behind every crack that opens in the earth. There is a gentle voice behind the roar of the waves. What if this earthquake weren't the end, but the beginning of a chain of greater signs? Some visionaries were already speaking of a time of purification, a time of cleansing where humanity would have to turn its eyes to heaven to understand what the earth can no longer hold. There are stories of monks hidden in hermitages in Europe who have prayed silently for years for the protection of their communities when the earth shook. It is said that on the Kamchatka Peninsula, near the epicenter, some fishermen lit candles to the Virgin Mary minutes before feeling the first vibration, as if a premonition, a slight tremor in their hearts, had warned them of what was about to explode beneath their feet. And while many look at maps, others open the Bible looking for answers. There will be earthquakes in various places, Mark wrote centuries ago, little imagining that these words would echo every time the earth thunders and splits. Today, as the eyes of the world look to Russia, the voice of Mother Mary filters through the headlines, reminding us that nothing happens without heaven's permission. But if this was only the first, what does the second rumble that some claim to have heard mean? Could it be that something even greater is brewing beneath the depths of the Pacific? And above all, what is expected of us? Because prophecy is not just news, it is a call. And the Virgin Mary speaks not to make us fearful, but to awaken us. Will we be ready to hear her? When tsunami sirens ignited their lament in Hawaii and Japan, the news spread faster than the waves themselves. From Russia, the vibration crossed continents, pierced skies, filtered through news wires and reached homes where mothers prayed, not knowing why they felt a weight on their chests. A distant tremor became close in a matter of seconds, and the Virgin Mary, from altars hidden in dusty corners, seemed to observe everything with the eyes of a vigilant mother. The fishermen of Kamchatka, who hours before had been gazing at the calm sea, now recount how the water receded with a strange silence, as if the tide were taking a deep breath before returning its full fury. The bells of a small church by the port began to ring, not by human hands, but by the vibration that shook its foundations. They say that anyone who looked at the bell tower felt a chill run down their spine. A bell that calls without being rung is a message that not everyone wants to hear. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, some faithful people pored over dusty pages of old visionaries' journals. There it was, written in fading ink, the announcement of a tremor of fire and water that would shake shores and open eyes closed by comfort. Some deny it, others mock it, but there are those who feel the truth brush against their necks when they read those words. In Mexico, where Marian faith burns like an eternal torch, prayer groups lit candles in front of images of the Virgin of Guadalupe. In each flickering flame, a plea was uttered: "Mother, protect us from the waters, stop the roaring of the earth." And as the candles illuminated weary faces, murmurs of rosaries were heard, asking for mercy for people who don't even know they could be next on the list. Because the rumor spreads, what if it wasn't just Russia? What if the rift that opened there far away is just the beginning of a bigger tear? A whisper says that the earth's crust can no longer bear the weight of so much sin, that the innocent blood spilled in nameless wars, in daily injustices, twists creation like a lament that needs to come to the surface. The elderly remember stories from grandmothers who said that when the earth thunders, it is because the sky demands cleansing. And the Virgin, in so many messages, repeats a phrase that resonates now more than ever: return to the heart of God before the earth demands it from you. Gentle words, but with a sharp edge. A warning that seems almost forgotten until nature shouts it with a thunder that distinguishes neither languages nor flags. There are those who prefer to think it was just a coincidence, that science will explain everything. But those who listen with an open mind know that science measures but does not calm. It explains but does not console. And that when the Virgin Mary cries, it is because there is something that science cannot stop. What will happen when these waves reach shores that lack sufficient walls? What message does this earthquake leave written in the sands of time? Meanwhile, new voices emerge, claiming to have dreamed of submerged cities, of crosses floating on turbulent waters, of bell towers sinking beneath seas of silence. Anonymous visionaries whom no one listens to until the earth confirms what their lips tremble as they recount. Is it coincidence or confirmation? And there, amidst fear and confusion, the mother stands. With her cloak extended, her hands clasped, her tears falling slowly upon entire villages. Each tear is a seed of hope for those who gather it with faith. Each tear is also a cry for hardened hearts, because behind the rumble of tectonic plates lies a whisper of mercy for those who dare to listen. But what else awaits beneath the icy waters of Kamchatka? What else moves silently in the depths? And most disturbingly, are we still in time to change the ending of this story? Amid colliding plates and roaring waves, the Virgin Mary continues speaking. Who will listen to her this time? While the earth continues to shake and the news reports report aftershocks and waves, forgotten Bibles are opened in quiet corners. Between worn pages, some find passages they hadn't read in years, and there will be earthquakes in various places, and there will be famines and troubles. Mark 13:8. Many skip past them, but others read and feel their skin prickle, as if an ancient and loving voice murmured from the past to open the eyes of the present. In small towns in Mexico, Colombia, and Peru, elderly women pray with worn rosary beads that have survived dictatorships, hurricanes, and wars. Today, their lips repeat the mysteries while television shows images of the sea retreating and returning in fury. In every Hail Mary lies a wish, that the waves may still, that the earth may be calmed, that humanity may awaken before it is too late. This isn't the first time Our Lady has warned. Fatima, Garabandal, Akita, Medjugorje, names that mean nothing to some, but for others are beacons lit amid nights of disbelief. In Akita, Japan, a wooden statue wept 101 times. It wept salt, it wept blood, it wept water, and each tear was a message. If you don't change, the earth will speak. Today, Japan once again looks to those tears as tsunami sirens sound like an echo of those warnings. Could it be that we only listen when nature cries out? Why don't we listen when the mother speaks in silence? Those who have made pilgrimages to sacred places know that there is a special heartbeat in the land blessed by apparitions. A distinct air, a breeze that brings words that are not spoken but are felt. They say that whoever places their ear close to an image of the Virgin sometimes hears the sound of a heart beating slowly, as if breathing in the pain of the world. In Russia, after the earthquake, entire families spend the night in makeshift shelters. Some carry Orthodox icons, lit candles, and prayers in ancient languages. Amidst the cold and fear, many whisper, "Mother, protect us." And although their voices are lost in the icy Kamchatka wind, the echoes reach other villages where they never imagined such a distant tremor could touch their roofs. Because what happens there has repercussions here. An earthquake in Russia is a shock to our consciences. It's a reminder that we have no control over anything, that beneath our feet are immense plates that breathe, move, and break. And we walk on those plates, believing ourselves invincible. Modern visionaries say that the Virgin Mary whispers to those who want to hear, "Prepare yourselves, cleanse your hearts, and pray continually." Not to instill fear, but to remind us that faith is the only refuge that no earthquake can destroy. And meanwhile, new reports are emerging of aftershocks no one expected, aftershocks that rattle windows and wake children in the middle of the night, aftershocks that trigger sirens on tiny islands, where waves can wipe out towns in a matter of minutes. What will happen if those waves advance? What will happen if you wake up tomorrow to the sea knocking on your door? On the Mexican coast, some fishermen gaze at the horizon with respect. Their grandparents told them that the sea not only gives life, but also takes it when it is disrespected, and that the Virgin of the Sea, as the queen who protects boats is called, always gives warning. Some claim to have seen on stormy nights lights dancing on the waves. They are her tears, they say, illuminating the path back to faith. Today, more than ever, the words float on troubled waters. Return to God. Listen to the wind. Hear the earth. For prophecy is not meant to paralyze, but to move, to shake hearts before the ground beneath them cracks. But what will come after Kamchatka? What other shores will wake up at dawn, hearing sirens that pierce the silence? What secret lies hidden beneath the roar of these waves? The Virgin continues speaking. We only need to listen to her with an open heart. Sailors say that when the sea whispers, it is because something great is brewing within. Many think the sea is only silent or roars, but the elders of forgotten shores affirm that the ocean speaks and that its words are understood only by those who still pray, looking at the horizon. After the great earthquake in Russia, some fishermen in Kamchatka swear they heard a deep lament, as if a voice trapped beneath tons of water seeking to warn them of what the surface did not want to hear. Meanwhile, in distant villages on the other side of the world, the rumor of the earthquake echoes through old radios and bright screens. Mothers turn off television so as not to frighten their children, but in the dimness of the living room, fear lingers like a formless shadow. The elders repeat that the earth shakes to cleanse, to remind people that not everything can be controlled. And when the earth breaks, the Virgin gathers every crack in her cloak so that despair does not swallow us up. In Mexico, where Marian faith is an unstoppable river, groups of faithful gather in modest chapels. Anonymous prayer members, beneath flickering candles, raise Hail Marys for foreign shores. They pray for Kamchatka as if it were their own home, because in the heart of the believer there are no borders. The Virgin is the same there as here. And when she weeps in Russia, her tears also wet the soil of Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina. We are one flock before the storm. There are those who mock these lit candles. They say faith doesn't stop tectonic plates, or that prayers don't stop tsunamis. But they forget that prayer doesn't change the sea, it changes the heart of man to sustain himself when the wave hits. And the Virgin, sweet mother who knows every fear, doesn't ask for miracles of stone. She asks for willing hearts. She asks for knees bent not out of fear, but out of love. In coastal villages, some children ask, "Mom, what happens if the sea comes?" The mothers respond in short sentences so as not to show a trembling in their voices. "Nothing will happen to us, son. The Virgin watches over us." And in those simple words lives a faith greater than any retaining wall, because the wall of prayer that mothers build is invisible, but firm as an eternal rock. Meanwhile, visionaries from distant lands write messages that filter through networks, through whispers, through old letters. They speak of sunken shores, of cities that will one day see water where today there is asphalt, of temples that will remain like lonely islands surrounded by silence, and yet each word ends the same. Do not fear, pray, return to God. It is a call as old as the waves themselves. Scientists calculate aftershocks, model tsunami paths, monitor buoys. They do their job, and their job saves lives. But faith saves souls, and when the earth stops shaking, the only thing left standing will be what cannot be seen. The hidden prayer, the lit candle, the word the Virgin whispers in the ear of those who still want to hear it. In Russian villages, amidst the cold and fear, there are makeshift altars with icons that smell of wax and dampness. Silent men remove their hats upon entering, make the sign of the cross, and ask for forgiveness for forgotten sins. An earthquake has the power to tear down walls, but also to shatter pride. And when the ground shakes, even the toughest bow their heads, searching for a voice to calm them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ocean, a Mexican peasant raises his eyes to the sky and murmurs, "May it not reach us here, Mother." He knows nothing of plaques or the Richter scale. He knows of earth cracked by the sun, of rain that sometimes doesn't come, of children who sleep hungry. And yet his faith is a beacon. Because when the Virgin whispers among the waves, her words cross seas, mountains, deserts, and are planted in hearts like seeds of hope. And amidst the endless aftershocks, the inevitable question arises, if this roar was merely a warning, what else will the earth tell us tomorrow? What fissure will open beneath our feet? What shores will awaken with sirens that cut through the dawn? And most profoundly, will we be able to hear the voice of the Mother before the next tremor wakes us with no time to return? While the earth shakes and the seas rehearse their fury, a rumor filters through among those who know the oldest prophecies. It is said that not all will tremble equally, that not all lands will yield under the same weight. There are areas, towns, corners forgotten by modern maps that, according to ancient visions, will be refugees when the world rumbles like a war drum. These are the so-called untouchable places, small points of light where faith still breathes, even though the storm seeks to extinguish it. On the Russian peninsula, some Orthodox monks live away from the hustle and bustle. For decades, their prayers have been raised like invisible walls, surrounding hermitages that barely withstand the icy wind. It is said that when the great earthquake opened its gorge, these monks felt a tremor beneath their feet, but their stone walls held, as if invisible hands held the foundations. They did not flee, they remained praying while the earth spoke. In Latin America, many are unaware that there are visionaries who have identified hills, valleys, and humble villages as secret refuges, not because physical tremors don't reach them, but because spiritual tremors find steadfast hearts. In the mountains of Peru, amidst mists that hide wooden crosses, entire families pray day and night. They know they are not immune to disaster, but they trust in the promise whispered from Fatima to Medjugorje, where one prays with faith, evil has no total power. Meanwhile, entire cities stare in disbelief at these stories. In the glass skyscrapers, few pause to consider that the Mother still speaks. The news reports report aftershocks, calculate losses, and show maps with red zones. But not a single headline contains the burning question, where is your true refuge? Because when the earth opens, no bunker can resist if your soul is hollow. Many think prophecy is only fear, but those who hear the voice of the Virgin know it is hope, disguised as a warning. She doesn't show catastrophes to fuel panic, but to help the seed of faith flourish when no one believes anymore. The untouchables are not the strong or the powerful. They are the humble who bend their knees when the ground shakes, those who light a candle when the electricity goes out, those who hug a rosary while the world runs for explanations. Meanwhile, new images arrive from Kamchatka. Collapsed houses, cracked temples, but also intact crosses amidst the rubble, as if the earth were saying, the material falls, the divine remains. There is a force that cannot be measured on the Richter scale: collective prayer. When a people pray, something in the invisible structure of the world is sustained. Some say that other seas will soon rise, that peaceful islands will feel the same fury, that tranquil shores will see waves where today there is golden sand. No one wants to imagine it, but the murmur runs: prepare. And true preparation doesn't come from walls or warehouses full of food. It comes from firm knees, clean hearts, and hands raised together, pleading for mercy. Where are the untouchables today? Perhaps they are old women praying alone in the shadows. Perhaps they are children murmuring an Our Father before going to sleep. Perhaps it is that small chapel high on a hill where the walls tremble, but the faith remains unshaken. They are islands of light in an expanding sea of darkness. When the Virgin speaks, not everyone listens, but those who listen know where to take refuge. They know that their house is not made of bricks, but of prayer, that their roof is not made of tiles, but of faith, that their foundation is not made of cement, but of trust. The untouchables do not flee the earthquake. They face it on their knees because they know that while the ground shakes, the sky holds. And now, while the earth is still shaking, a question arises that pierces the conscience. Where is your refuge? Where is your faith? Perhaps the answer is hidden in a lit candle, in a forgotten rosary, in a sincere tear that cleanses the heart. Because if the Virgin has wept, it is not to frighten, it is to embrace. And amid tremors, her embrace remains firm. Those who have seen the earth tremble say that fear has a smell. It is a mixture of cold sweat, thick air, and heavy silence. But those who have prayed in the midst of disaster say there is also another aroma, one that cannot be explained with words. It is a soft, almost imperceptible perfume that arises when someone invokes the Virgin Mary in the midst of chaos. It is as if her invisible presence clears the heavy air and for an instant sows peace where everything screams destruction. In Kamchatka, after the Great Explosion, some families gathered around old images, inherited from grandmothers, now resting in the ice fields. By the light of flickering candles, they recited prayers, while outside the ground continued to groan. Between each aftershock, a Hail Mary. Between each creaking of the walls, an Our Father. And they say that between tears and fear, some felt a strange warmth on their backs, as if someone were coming to cover them with an invisible blanket. It's not fantasy or superstition for those who live it. It's the certainty that faith summons presences that don't fit on radar or seismic bulletins. The Virgin is a mother, and a mother doesn't abandon her children even if the house collapses. Her mantle, they say, is capable of enveloping whoever calls to her with an open heart, and that presence changes the atmosphere of any room, even if the entire earth crumbles. In Latin America, thousands of faithful know this mystery. Who hasn't felt an inexplicable relief when praying before a simple image? Who hasn't felt that even though the storm rages outside, a sweet whisper calms the tempest within? Homes that keep images of the Virgin, small makeshift altars and spent candles become invisible fortresses when dark days arrive. Grandparents know this. That's why when the news announces disasters, they light a candle and pray the rosary. They do so not because they believe it will stem the tide or heal the rift in the earth, but because they know their prayer changes something deeper. It changes fear into hope. It changes doubt into strength. It changes anguish into faith. Meanwhile, experts continue measuring aftershocks, adjusting maps and issuing coastal warnings. And it's right that they do so. But there is one map that isn't shown on television. It is the map of hearts aflame with faith. It is the diagram of souls who, amidst alarms, decide to trust that we are not alone. The Virgin walks silently among broken houses, among submerged villages, among wailing sirens. Her voice doesn't resonate like the earth, but it penetrates deeper. Some witnesses of the earthquake say they saw intact crosses among the ruins, finding Marian images covered in dust, but standing. Small signs that mean nothing to others, but for those who believe they are clear messages. My presence is not broken, even if everything breaks. These are details that nourish faith when the walls crack and the ground is no longer firm. And while some rush to get news, others rush to light candles. Each candle is a spark of light that pierces the darkness of collective fear. Each Hail Mary is an invisible brick that strengthens the spiritual roof of a family. Because when the Virgin Mary is present, the atmosphere changes. The atmosphere becomes lighter. The air is purified. There are houses that don't have alarms or high walls, but they have an ancient faith that no earthquake can topple. There are families who don't understand tectonic plates, but they do know how to kneel when the earth shakes. And that humility is the greatest shield. Because when the Virgin places her mantle over a home, no matter how strong the waves come, a calm reigns inside that is not of this world. And now, with the earth still groaning beneath Kamchatka and the waves watched over by buoys that flicker like silent sentinels, a question arises. How present is the Virgin in our homes? Do we let her in only when it thunders? Or do we invite her in every day, even when the ground seems firm? Because firm days are deceptive, and foundations not supported by faith crumble without warning. Perhaps, as you read these lines, you too feel that presence. It is not fantasy. It is the gentle voice of a mother who never abandons. A mantle spread over a restless people, a lamp lit so that we may not fear the darkness. Because as long as the Virgin walks among us, no earthquake will be able to bury hope. There are words that the earth respects, names that the wind cannot silence, even if it roars through open cracks. Those familiar with Marian prophecies know that one of those names, spoken with faith, is capable of shaking not only tectonic plates, but also the shadows that lurk when all seems lost. Mary. Yes, while many repeat numbers, figures and scales, others murmur that blessed name like an invisible shield. In Kamchatka, when the roar reached its peak, some Orthodox elders knelt in the snow and said it out loud, over and over again, "Mary, Mary, Mary." And they say that amid the creaking of the earth, they felt as if a warm breeze was sweeping away the deadly cold. It wasn't magic, it wasn't superstition. It was the profound certainty that the name of the Mother is not an empty word, but a sword of light that pierces the darkest night. It is a name that makes evil tremble, that pierces the darkness and opens a crack through which hope seeps in. In Latin America, devotees of the Virgin Mary know this well. Grandmothers who bless their grandchildren by saying her name before bed. Men who cross themselves before boarding a boat, invoking her as protector of the seas. Mothers who stick a holy image of her on the back of their doors, not out of superstition, but because they sense that her invisible gaze covers what human sight cannot reach. But what happens when the earth opens up? When the sea threatens to wipe out entire villages, is it still useful to pronounce that name? For those who don't believe, it sounds absurd. For those who believe, it is an anchor, a refuge, a door that no wave can knock down. In coastal villages, when news of tsunamis arrives, there's no shortage of people rushing to haul up sandbags, reinforce walls, and move belongings to higher ground. And that's right, we must be prepared. But some also light candles before an image of the Virgin and say her name with a fervor that doubles their fear. Because they know that a concrete wall can break, but a wall of prayer rises to heaven. In Russia, where the cold is a constant blanket, many don't understand how such a passionate devotion to the Virgin Mary flourishes in Latin America. But when the earth creaks, we all become equal. And suddenly, a fisherman from Kamchatka and a Mexican peasant woman share the same prayer. Mary, protect my family, regardless of language, regardless of distance. The name is one. The visionaries insist, when the world shakes most violently, when the fury of nature seems unstoppable, the name of Mary will be a refuge for the simple. It will be a beacon for those who doubt, a shield for those who tremble, because it is not the syllable that saves, but the faith hidden behind it. There are ancient stories that tell of entire cities protected by her intercession, tales of plagues halted, of fires extinguished just before devouring temples dedicated to her. Testimonies of soldiers who invoked her name in icy trenches and returned alive when all was lost. Today, in times when war no longer wears a uniform, but rather shocks that rise from the womb of the earth, her name once again rises as a banner. And meanwhile, science calculates. Buoys in the Pacific blink, sending data to satellites that spin tirelessly. Newscasts announce alerts. Drones fly over coasts to measure the fury of the water, and it's necessary. But what measure detects the power of the name of Mary? None. Because its strength isn't plotted on graphs, it's felt in the calm that descends when everything roars, in the faith that remains when fear devours logic. Perhaps, as long as the earth continues to groan, the only thing that sustains us is to pronounce her name as the early Christians did, in the darkness of the catacombs, persecuted, surrounded by death, but with a certainty etched in fire. She will not abandon us. Today, so many centuries later, the same truth returns, wrapped in earthquakes, tsunamis, and blood-curdling news. She is still here. And you, who read this while the earth continues to move, ask yourself, what power does her name have for you? Do you pronounce it with fear, with routine, or with the faith of one who knows she is invoking the sweetest and firmest protection? Perhaps today is the time to murmur again, Mary. Perhaps today, more than ever, her name is the key that opens the door when the wave crashes against your house. In the midst of the storms that lash the world, when shadows seem to envelop every corner of the earth, a clear and firm voice resounds, a voice that breaks the silence of despair, the promise of the Virgin Mary. This promise is not a mere whisper, nor an empty word thrown to the wind. It is a sacred, eternal commitment that transcends time and space. The Virgin, loving and protective Mother, has declared that those who trust in her Son, in Jesus Christ, will never be abandoned. This is the promise that never fails, that never breaks, even when all seems lost. Why is it so important to cling to this promise in times of crisis? Because humanity is experiencing moments of great uncertainty. Violence, chaos, wars, and natural disasters are multiplying. In countries like Mexico, where violence has become unbearable, millions are crying out for hope, for a ray of light to dispel the darkness. In Russia, where geopolitical tensions cause fear and anxiety, people are searching for comfort and meaning. The Virgin Mary, through her apparitions and messages, has insisted that faith is the anchor that sustains the soul when the sea roars with fury. This promise is not for a select few, but for all. For you who read this now, for me who share these words, for every heart that beats with a desire for peace and redemption. Our Lady assures us that even if the enemy tries to sow fear, division, and despair, the light of Christ will never be defeated. Our Heavenly Mother walks beside us, enfolding us in her mantle and inviting us to be courageous. Do not fear, she says, for I am with you. Take heart, for my Son has overcome the world. You may wonder, how can I live this promise in my daily life? The answer lies in total surrender, in constant prayer, in opening my heart to receive the Holy Spirit. It is not an easy path, because evil comes with cunning and force, but every act of love, every gesture of forgiveness, every moment dedicated to prayer strengthens the promise within us. The Virgin Mary is the perfect intercessor. Her maternal power protects us, and her prayers open doors where there seem to be no way out. Throughout human history, there have been times when this promise has been manifested with unwavering force. Think of the difficult times Our Lady experienced at Fatima, when the messages were urgent and the world seemed on the brink of the abyss. Her promise, however, illuminated the path to conversion and hope. Today, more than ever, those same words resonate strongly in the hearts of millions of faithful. It is no coincidence that amid so many fulfilled prophecies, the call to trust in this promise intensifies, for in it lies salvation, true peace, and the strength to move forward. We cannot forget that this promise is also a call to action. The Virgin Mary not only asks us to trust, but also to be instruments of her love and peace. She invites us to be bearers of light in the midst of darkness, to reach out to our neighbors, to build bridges where there are walls. When we live this promise with an open heart, we become living witnesses of divine power, guardians of the hope our world so desperately needs. And so, amid doubts and certainties, amid trials and miracles, the Virgin Mary's promise remains firm, unshakable, like a rock on which we can rest. It is the promise that we are not alone, that every tear will be wiped away, every pain soothed, every soul found. Therefore, today I invite you to make a pact with this promise, to seal it in your life with faith and determination. At every dawn, may you remember that the Virgin Mary walks with you, that her love never fails, and that in the midst of the storm, the light of her sun always shines. Do you feel that call in your heart? Are you willing to embrace this promise that transforms and renews? Do you want to be part of that stream of hope that the Virgin Mary extends to the world? Do not allow doubts or fear to rob you of the peace she offers. Trust, for her word is faithful and true. And so, with this promise tattooed on our souls, we advance together toward the next revelation that heaven has prepared for us. And so we arrive at this point on the path where every word, every message, every tear, and every prayer has led us to understand that there exists a place where everything that seems broken is rebuilt, where everything that is lost is found, and where all fear is transformed into living faith. That place is not a hidden corner of the world, not a distant sanctuary that only a few can visit. That place dwells in the depths of the heart willing to believe. There, in the intimacy of the soul that surrenders to the promise of the Virgin Mary, the unbreakable flourishes. It is not a secret reserved for saints or prophets. It is a gift available to each of us. One need only look around to understand why Our Lady insists so much on her messages. Humanity is tearing itself apart. Families are breaking up. Violence strikes mercilessly. Faith grows cold. Many allow themselves to be seduced by the darkness, by the noise of the world that promises temporary relief and distracts us from the true treasure, the certainty that God dwells within us when we let Him in. And Mary, with her maternal gaze, whispers to us every day, "Return to my Son, for only He can give you what no one else can offer you, the peace that cannot be broken." Perhaps right now you feel a struggle within you, a voice telling you that you are not worthy, that there is no salvation for you, that your mistakes are too great. But listen carefully. That voice does not come from heaven. It is the enemy whispering lies to make you give up. Mary comes to remind you that where sincere repentance dwells, mercy springs forth like an inexhaustible spring. No chain is so strong that her Son cannot break. No wound is so deep that her love cannot heal. No past is so dark that God's light cannot illuminate. Where the unshakable dwells, we learn to walk among thorns without losing hope. We learn to rise after each fall, not with human strength, but sustained by divine grace. There we learn to look with different eyes, to see others as brothers and sisters, to bless even those who hurt us, because true strength is not in our hands, but in our faith. That is why Mary calls us to open wide the doors of our hearts, to allow Jesus to transform our ruins into living temples of love. In this secret place of the soul, the outside world loses its power to intimidate. Yes, there will be wars, there will be rumors of destruction, there will be news that inspires fear. But he who dwells in the unshakable knows that his dwelling is built on solid rock. Hurricanes may blow with fury, but they will not tear down a house founded on prayer, on devotion, on trust. And that trust is nourished day after day with simple gestures. A rosary recited with devotion, a confession that liberates, a nourishing Eucharist, a word of comfort offered to a dejected brother or sister. Many ask, what must I do to remain steadfast? The answer is not complicated, although it requires courage. Live each day as if it were the first and the last, entrusting every moment to the Virgin. Place your worries in her immaculate heart. Entrust your fears, your children, your battles to her. Let her guide your steps, like a mother who takes the hand of her lost child. She knows the way, because she herself walked through thorns and tears, but she never allowed her faith to be extinguished. And now that you know where the unshakable dwells, what will you do with this treasure? Don't keep it all to yourself. Mary needs voices that proclaim hope, hands that work for peace, hearts that are not afraid to kneel and pray for a world that forgets God. The battle is great, yes, but we are not alone. Every rosary prayed, every tear offered, every act of silent love is a seed of eternity that will blossom in its time. Remember this. Unbreakability is not the absence of pain, but the certainty of victory. It is not the lack of trials, but the courage to endure them hand in hand with Christ. It is not the absence of tears, but the certainty that each one of them will be taken up by the Mother in heaven. That is why today, here, where your feet pause to hear these words, the door to a different tomorrow opens. May this final revelation be a beginning, not an end. May each step bring you closer to that inner strength that only faith can build. May the world see in you a reflection of the fulfilled promise, the light of Christ shining in the midst of the storm, the outstretched hand that lifts up the fallen, the voice that announces that Mary continues to walk with us. Because as long as there is a heart willing to believe, as long as there is a whisper of prayer rising to heaven, as long as even one of us dares to say yes to God, the darkness will never win. There, deep within, dwells the unshakable. Are you ready to protect him? Are you willing to let her be your refuge? Then take Mary's hand and never let go, because with her, every promise is fulfilled, every fear is conquered, and every soul, however broken, becomes a living sign of eternal love. It is said that in a small village, hidden among mountains and silent valleys, there lived a simple woman named Rosario. No one in the world could have imagined that this mother of four, with hands chapped by work and a heart torn by poverty, would unwittingly become a living testimony to the promise of the Virgin Mary. Rosario woke before dawn. Her feet touched the cold floor as she lit a candle in front of the small statue of the Virgin Mary she had inherited from her mother. Her lips repeated, over and over again, the rosary she learned as a child. Each bead was a supplication, each Hail Mary a seed planted in heaven. Her children watched her in silence, not fully understanding why their mother knelt every morning, even when illness, hunger, and loneliness seemed to devour her. A relentless winter struck her village. Crops were lost to the frost, animals died of exposure, and scarcity became the shadow that sat at her table every night. Rosario barely had the strength to get up, but she never stopped praying. "My mother, you promised that you would not abandon your children," she whispered. "If I am to go without bread, give me the faith to support my little ones. If I am to lose everything, may I never lose your hand." One night, when despair was drowning her like a dark river, Rosario dreamed of the Virgin Mary. In her dream, Mary looked at her with a tenderness that no human words can describe. The mother spread her mantle over her humble hut, and her voice, like a gentle echo, said to her, "Do not be afraid, Rosario. I am here. Your tears are my tears. Your hunger is my hunger. Your faith is the key that will open the door you cannot see now." Rosario awoke drenched in tears, but her heart burned with an unknown peace. The next day, as the sun barely touched the hills, some neighbors knocked on her door. They brought sacks of corn, blankets, medicine. No one could explain where this unexpected help came from. Only Rosario understood. The Virgin's promise had been fulfilled. There was no thunder, no miracles of blinding lights, only human hands moved by an invisible love. From that day on, Rosario never doubted again. Her life, marked by poverty, became rich in faith, and her children, today good men and women, carry her legacy of prayer to every corner they set foot on. Perhaps you, who are listening to these words now, feel that your reality resembles Rosario's. Perhaps your feet tread on cold floors, your hands tremble with fear, your table seems empty, and your nights are filled with tears no one sees. Today, I want to invite you to close your eyes, right where you are, and repeat with me this prayer that unites your voice with the voice of millions who cry out under the mantle of the Virgin. Prayer. Holy Mother, Virgin Mary, Mother of unbroken hope, Mother of love that never fails, today I come before you with an open heart, with empty hands, with the certainty that only you can intercede for me. I give you my fears, my wounds, my silences. I give you my children, my house, my struggles. I beg you to put your mantle over every corner of my life, that you cover my nights with your light, that you lift up my faith when my knees can no longer bear it. Teach me, my mother, to walk like Rosario, to believe when all seems lost, to wait for the cold to surround me, to trust when the storm screams my name. Make me a living witness of your promise, messenger of your peace, guardian of your secret, herald of your Son, who is the light of the world. Today I renew my faith. Today I declare that where the unbreakable dwells, I will dwell. Because you sustain me, you hug me, you remind me that, even broken, my heart beats with hope. Virgin Mary, Queen of Peace, Mother of fulfilled prophecies, intercede for me before your Son, Jesus Christ. Let my life be an offering. May my lips proclaim your greatness. May my steps follow the path of faith. And when the day comes, when my voice fades away, may my last whispers be a song of love. Thank you, my goodness. Thank you for your fulfilled promise. Thank you for never letting me go. Amen. Today, dear brother, dear sister, this final message does not close a cycle, but opens 1,000 doors. Because now you know that faith is not a distant idea, but a living flame, that the Virgin Mary is not a static figure, but an active, present, real mother. That her promise is not an illusion, but a certainty that is planted in the soil of your life and blossoms when you least expect it. Like Rosario, you can be a sign of hope. Today you can be a calming voice, a holding hand, a forgiving gaze. No matter how broken your story is, Mary can rewrite every page. No matter how dark your night seems, Mary will light a star. May you remember every morning that there is a place where the unshakable dwells. And that place is you when you decide to believe, because God doesn't choose perfect angels, but willing hearts. Now take a deep breath. Look up. Trust. The Virgin Mary walks with you. And nothing and no one will be able to stop the promise that beats alive within you.